What's up, guys? This is Corey Baker from Baker Forge and Tool. In my business, we do tons of heavy grinding every single day, and we needed a grinder that could take abuse and keep on trucking without slowing down billet production. The Ameribraid variable speed 2x72 is just that. All heavy-duty parts and framing with well-thought-out accessories that are easy to use and not bogged down with lots of tiny parts. By far, the best accessory item that Ameribraid sells is their surface grinding attachment. It is absolutely foolproof and the best in the industry. With quick-release magnet system, there is no prying your workpiece off the platen. Very fast to slap a billet or a knife onto the table, engage magnets, and start surfacing with precise increments. On top of all of this, their customer support is outstanding. Eric and Kevin are always available and fast to help with any situation. If you're in the market for a top-of-the-line grinder, or maybe just an accessory to add to your existing setup, go to ameribraid.com and use the code HUSTLE100 for $100 off any grinder package. All right, next up, the Hustle and Grind Podcast.
What's up, everybody? We're back again. It's me, your host, Ryan of Ryan Chadbourne Knife Works. I'm here with Noah Bloomberg of the Eniat River Forge, and we are kicking off Sick Guest September, that was a mouthful, with Fingal Ferguson. How's it going, man? It is truly an honor to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me on. Looking forward to this.
Yeah, this is going to be a good time. So you're in Ireland. I can't pronounce the town, but it's in Cork County.
Skull, County Cork. Yeah, West Cork.
Yeah, okay. And other than making knives, you make cheese, correct?
Do a little bit of everything. We have a farm, and like we do cured meats, and we make the salamis and everything there, and the cheese, and then there's the knives is sort of a thing on the side. Farmers markets, a little bit of everything. Yeah,
living the dream. That's
you sort of many tongues in the fire, man of many skills and master of none, giving it all a go. They're all sort of intertwined. It's my parents, basically my dad is like, I'm the fifth generation on the farm, and my mum, when they met, she started making the cheese. And then years later, as I kind of grew up, I helped my dad build a smoker on the farm to smoke the cheese. And that's where I started playing around with the salamis and everything else. And that kind of grew legs. And then through all of these things of making the food, all these friends in our lives were all chefs and food producers. And then that led to us sort of like, I suppose, led me to falling in love with food. And that therefore led to the knife, which is the tool of the trade. So they're kind of all intertwined. And they kind of perpetually kind of intermingle. And so, yeah, just kind of led to a wonderful chaotic scenario.
Yeah,
you do seem to be one of the busiest guys in the industry, is with that ridiculous amount of things that you do. But I'm curious, where you talked about it just kind of led into the knives, but what was your first knife? Like what drew you to build that first one, and where did that come from?
I suppose I was butchering. So in my teens, I was kind of already into this whole process of sort of doing the meat curing and the butchery. So what I ended up doing was sort of wanted to find out how to sharpen a knife. And a great character, a guy called Rory Connor, who actually trained with Bob Loveless over in the States. He came back to Ireland after a stint of that, and was probably, to me, one of the first and main guys to really be the sort of the chef knife hero of Ireland, to kind of like do that handmade chef knife. And he was the guy that I always remember looking up to him, and it's kind of like, if we want a special gift for somebody, what should we give them? And it was always like, go to Rory and get him to make a knife for them. So I kind of had him on a pedestal as this guy that made this incredible product. Now, when you make food, if you're a writer, you deserve a really good pen. If you're, these things that kind of make sense. To me, that the tool of the trade, the knife, was this fascinating kind of thing that was multifaceted. So when I started farting around and trying to learn how to sharpen and basically fix these knives I'd inherited from my uncle, and just kind of that led to me probably traveling around, and every time I saw an opportunity to do it, I would do more. So a guy called Owen Bush in the UK, in Kent, I did a workshop with him when I was farming in New Zealand when I was quite young. Part of the agricultural cert in Ireland, you have to do work experience. So I farmed in New Zealand, and there was a great place in Barrytown in the very south of New Zealand where I went to make a knife there. And then along comes the internet and YouTube and all that kind of side of things, where I basically was able to research more. And I just got more and more into it. And in the beginning, in a very cocky way, thought I was making these fantastic knives, and I was being complimented by wonderful friends. And now looking back, they're pieces of shit, but they were part of my adventure.
I think we all have kind of had that experience where, you've never made anything in your life, and so then all of a sudden you're making something, and your friends are all like, "Oh, this is so great," and they want to be encouraging and
Yeah.
they want to be nice, but you look back
I
on them
think
now,
they
and
I
it's
think they
like,
meant it as well. And to look back, I mean, I think maybe just the more we do it, the more we over focus on the minutia and stuff like that. I mean, even I suppose like there is this. I mean, like I even saw I was up staying with friends today. I was catering an event with some really close friends I've known forever. And I was staying in their house last night. I've got all of 4 hours sleep. So if my podcast gets very fucking weird towards the end, it's a lack of sleep is probably part of it. But what happened was that I was actually seeing the knives that I was giving away to my closest dear friends, and they still have them. And one of them was like a sort of a tine off of an old plow or sort of bit of farm machinery that was sort of forged out, hammered flat, and I kind of then ground it all down and made a knife. It's his favorite knife, and I actually can see it now, the charm of it, and these little things that I grasped onto that have transformed and rolled over time to become maybe a signature that ties all the knives together over time. There's always something you cling on to from the very beginning. And I think I see those now, and I look back and kind of go, I'm really glad that knife is with a close friend. Because it's not the perfect knife. It's not the perfect knife, but it's part of my adventure. And having a great friend and seeing it every time, it's a reminder of the beginnings.
that's a very healthy way to look at it, because I think a lot of us are we tend to look at some of our first knives and they're out in the world, and it's like, well, I want these back. Like, can I buy these back and I'll make you a new one, something like that, because they just kind of want to hide it.
I
But
tried that.
having that
And do you know what? A lot of those knives I got back and fixed, I fucked them up. And I spent hours and days then undoing my compulsive urge to try and make it better, actually fucking it up. And I suddenly realized, just leave that alone. And just don't touch it. It is something that's there. Give them another one, update it, do
sure,
whatever you want to
there
do.
you
If
go.
it's that bad, get something to replace it. But I think, by actually tweaking the handle, you suddenly find that you grind into the huge burl hole for the tang that you sort of, may have got. And then you're back to square one. This piece that actually meant a lot to them, because it was an early knife of yours, is suddenly now maybe unrecoverable. So I actually would recommend to anybody, maybe, unless it's tiny superficial tweaks you're going to make to a knife, don't go big. Don't go to town on your old school knives. Maybe update a friend's knife, but leave it at that, because I've been burned.
That's solid advice there. But yeah, I just like the way that you were, looking at it as important. This was first steps. This
Hmm.
was, part of my learning experience, accepting that and, using that as inspiration to keep moving forward. I think it's a very
Yeah.
healthy and I've lost the word there. It's a good way to look at it, and it's helpful moving forward, I think.
It,
Yeah. No, they're all fun.
it's a good example of how our learning is incremental too, because if you look back at a knife you made 4 years ago, 5 years ago, or in the beginning, you can see, like, in your mind, you're like, how did I not know how to fix that in that moment?
Mm.
Because
Yeah.
we're not consciously realizing in the moment that we've learned a new thing. It's just a gradual progression of skill set. And
Mm. Do you know
I've
that
got a
one where
bunch of
people
my old.
often
Go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to say, do you know that funny thing where people often say, do you find it hard to let go of a knife? That there's one that, you knew I wanted to keep that one. I mean, I've never found that scenario. It's always like, free it out to the world, that knife, and making that taught you something that you're going to roll forward to the next one, because the next one could always be better. So, there's always knowing that if you're looking at this as a permanent, so it's just, don't ever want to hoard one. They're all learning blocks and curves to get, next time I'm going to recurve that a little bit more. There's always something that you should look at and focus as being something that you can improve on, and just embrace that bit.
Yeah,
That's
I always end up keeping the screwed up ones that you can't send out.
My sister
yeah.
has a huge collection of my fucked up knives as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why. I've heard a lot of guys say that, and I've just never felt the inclination to keep one of my knives. I even ones that I'm super proud of. It's like, well, no, the reason that I made this is to get it out of my shop and to make another one. Like that's the
Yeah.
point. That's
I owe a lot of friends a lot of favors. I mean, I'm just in that scenario where I love that as well. I mean, I'm one of those people who loves to give things as well. I love to get things. I love to give things. You know? But there is this thing where there's that pleasure. You know when you buy the ultimate present for a friend, I can't sit in it. You know, I always like, can I give it to you now? Can I give it to you now? And I think that's that anytime there's a favor, I'm a great believer in karma. You know, that wonderful thing. So like giving it out to the world, whatever you put out into the world comes back to you. And I think that's something I definitely believe in, and I have found it 1,000 times over. So I always feel like, you know, there are those cases if I have a knife and I have been sitting on it. To sell it is one thing, but to give it to somebody and don't tell them there's something wrong with it. That doesn't have to be said. But if there is something to you that you don't feel right about selling it, then yeah, it is the ultimate gift to somebody. And depending on what that issue is, yeah, it goes out there. Next thing you know, it'll embarrass you in 3 years' time anyway, so that's fine.
Yeah.
well, I mean, that's something we've talked about on this podcast before, which is, you know, the ultimate joy in life doesn't come from doing things for yourself. It comes from doing things for other people. And I mean,
Totally.
that's something that, you know, as a young person, it took me a long time to figure that out. You know, people, you know, you buy things and you're just never satisfied. You're just like, oh, if I just had this next thing, if I just had this next pay raise and things like that. The most joy that I've found in my life just comes from being able to do things for other people. And I think, you know, being a part of this craft has really allowed me to do that more than even in the rest of my life, especially with the being a part of the community and the different, you know, fundraisers that we've done over the years and different, you know, stuff like that. I've given away tons of knives and I love it.
I think that, yeah, no, you're right. You're right. It's a good thing to do. Very good thing to do. And actually just, I mean, if you have the chance to actually make them and get that productive thing, but I always, yeah, there's, if you have them, set them free.
I like that. If you have them, set them free. So I just wanted to ask real quick. You mentioned that you were in New Zealand for farming. How did that come about?
So in Ireland, the part of the whole process, I mean, calling a spade, or keeping it simple, like there's a whole thing where inheritance of a farm involves sort of having the agricultural cert. The green cert has been nicknamed, and if you don't, there's a sort of a higher inheritance tax. So it's a very clever way a long time ago of getting farmers to actually go out and educate themselves. Because I mean, a lot of my friends I know growing up, you're in this situation where you're like, I'm just going to, you know, I don't need to go to school. I'm just going to take over the farm. I'm not going to do anything. So it was like making all these young farmers go through education and university and all that sort of things. So it involves 1 year in college, a good stint of work experience, followed by sort of weekend workshops and everything else, and then closing it out. So it's more or less a 3 year session to get the green cert completed. And after the year of college, agricultural college, I went off to, and I met this guy, came to a school, and he was a farm relief kind of a guy who hires for farm relief in New Zealand. So basically you fly over there and you go and help the dairy farms, and you basically travel around as a gun for hire. And that way you get to see the rest of the planet and sort of go for this work experience, see the other side of the world. And you know that great thing, you know the expression, don't shit in your own doorstep? There's nothing better than shitting on the other side of the planet, you know. So I got on the plane, I flew over there, and I think I worked for 8 months and kind of blew it all in one weekend, you know, while sort of traveling around afterwards. But it was a great experience. I literally, I was in my sort of 19 to 20 years old, and I went from leaving our farm where we milk kind of 100 cows to going over to start milking 500 cow herds, and sort of this huge sense of scale in a beautiful part of the world, and you know, worked like a madman, and came home, and it really opened my eyes. You know, go there a boy, come back a man. I definitely didn't come back a man, but it was one step closer. Still not a man.
Very cool. That's a very interesting concept, because I mean, here in the United States, we don't have anything like that. You know, there's farms and orchards around me, especially that have been in families for generations.
Yeah,
and
same in Ireland.
Nothing like that.
No land changes hands in Ireland. It's basically like the land is this important, essential part of us here in Ireland. But I think something crazy figure, like anything from 30 to 40% of farms can change hands every year in New Zealand, because what they have this interesting concept for anybody agriculturally minded. I always love this. It's called share milking. What they do is that if you go out there and you work for somebody, they pay you to kind of do the work. And then if you do all the work on the farm and somebody else owns the land, owns the cows, then you get 25% of the milk check. Now, if you own the herd and you do all the work, you get 50% of the milk check. And if you get to a point where you save enough money and you own the herd and own the, and own the land and somebody else's work, so it's this percentage of property. So everybody's always trying to upscale and get to the point where eventually you retire with your land and the cows and somebody else is doing the work and you're basically maintaining the farm. And there's constantly sort of this changing and tweaking around because it's a huge amount of work, and it's more the world market than sort of the subsidized European style of farming. But it was an interesting concept.
Very cool. That is interesting I mean, we don't, especially here in the United States. You mentioned that you live kind of in what would be called the Texas of Ireland. Well, United States is it's the United States of the world, which is we're very navel gazing. We're very very interested in the United States and nowhere else. So we don't get these pictures of what it's like in different countries. We know how it works here, and we have no idea how it works in other countries. So it's always one of my favorite things is to learn about those other things and figure out how the rest of the world works, because it can be really eye-opening, and it sounds like
the world is by far becoming a smaller place, isn't it? I mean, if you think about it, through social media and everything else, even these conversations we're having now so casually using technology, remember that whole thing, the 7 degrees of separation? I mean, fuck, it's 2 or 3 degrees of separation now.
Yeah.
No. So I feel like we know more about the world. Our eyes are open so much more, and in such a fast, kind of accelerated way. I think I'm kind of glad for that. But it's the hands-on and eyes-on experience is sometimes the thing that we lack. We feel we understand and know everything, but actually nobody's ever got their hands in and stuck in, and that's where you really learn.
Yes. I think it was Hemingway who said, travel is the enemy of prejudice, and it really made me think. And it's like, the more that you see of other cultures and understand, the more you realize that we're all the same people. It's just we've grown up with these different cultures, and understanding those is kind of the doorway to acceptance and whatnot. And so I would love to do something along those same lines.
Oh,
it sounds like an amazing
you want to go back
experience.
And slap the shit out of yourself as a kid for not realizing things that But that's growing up, isn't it? You have to really embarrass yourself and do the stupid things, kind of growing up to actually vow to never do it again. And those sort of experiences. But yeah, it is important.
Yeah, our generation too is in a weird spot in the timeline of the universe, because we're coming from a landline type phone, like you were out until the streetlights came on, you know what I mean? There was no screen interaction. You only knew the people around you, to now, like you said, where you're in Ireland, I'm in Maine, and Noah's on the West Coast. So we're like 2 guests away from being global, It's like, and we're just shooting the shit. Like,
speaking of that, tell me about your week. This is it. Tell me all about what you guys, how did everything go? Well, you were working on a knife. You just showed me there before the show started.
Oh, yeah, that one I finished a while ago. But I've been cleaning up my shop today, wrapping up some projects, doing some horrible leather sheaths because I'm not very good at leather.
Do you know, is it one of those things you'd like to get, or would you be just as happy being able to outsource that if you had a good neighbor, a guy, somebody close to you that's good with leather?
I'd rather outsource it.
Because believe it or not, today there's a great friend who is actually traveling around the country. His name's Garvin de Brewer, which is quite honestly the sexiest name of the planet. So Garvin was with his girlfriend driving around West Cork, and he's a total hunk who kind of plays rugby and did all this kind of stuff. But he's a gifted leather worker who also is a fantastic engineer and multiple things. But he thinks different. So I met him years ago working on a project to make a knife case for Francis Malman, which had something like nearly 30 knives in it. It was this mad piece with this interesting concept of being able to hang on a wall like a painting. And he ended up wrapping the knife case around a tree, and all the knives had to be exposed, but yet hang in this case. And Garvin just works with that really thick, chunky leather, and it's very raw, simple, and over-engineered in a beautiful way. And he literally came down today with a bunch of other experimental knife cases and sort of different concepts of it. And I love. You go to his workshop. It's a very clever thing when you immerse yourself and focus entirely on one thing. And the magical things will kind of happen. Like when I went to his workshop, beautiful wooden workshop, cupboards and stuff everywhere. The hinges for his cupboards are just a perfect square of leather with the screws in a nice kind of way. Literally, just the square acts like a perfect hinge. So all his hinges and all these cupboards and lockers are just, instead of being a metal hinge, it's a piece of leather screwed from the door to the thing. Works perfectly. Very thick, chunky leather. It was when you actually, sometimes the simplest solution for something has been under your nose the entire time. And it just takes that little brief moment to kind of go, aha, I have it. And he's one of those guys who has those moments. I think a lot.
Noah and I are both mechanics, so I think we probably have those moments quite a bit. There's been quite a few times I've tried to diagnose something and I beat myself up over it so bad, and then just, there's a fuse right there. Oh, it's the fuse. Yeah. Oh, no big deal. Yeah. You just have the.
Well, I would have bypassed that fucking fuse hours ago. What fuse?
So yeah, actually, go ahead, man.
Go ahead. I was gonna say I did get something cool this week. So they fired a kid that I worked with, so I decided to pick up more time because the shop's been slow, anyways. But part of the fringe benefits of my job is I get all the abandoned chainsaws and stuff because we have to clean out. So literally the back of I have a Subaru wagon, and the whole back of it, I've just been driving around with 40 chainsaws in the back of my car.
That's both spooky and brilliant all at the same time.
Yeah, I've huffed way too much gas fumes this week. I get in, I put all the windows down and don't light a cigarette for a couple minutes. I'm like, Jesus Christ, I got to find a spot in here for him. But that'll be cool.
But there is some contraption. This is like, are you going to convert them or fix them? Or is there some amazing thing you can use a retired chainsaw for?
Oh, I'm sure I could figure something, but usually I'll eBay them. So the ones that are worth fixing, I'll fix, and the ones that aren't, I'll just put them back together and sell them as parts. And it's just a way that my boss can like give us some breadcrumbs,
Ryan, what you should do is you should rig up one of those that are one of the higher powered ones, rig it up into a chainsaw winch so that you can anchor one side to a tree and the other side rigged up to a chain so that you can haul things with the chainsaw.
Can you do a 2x72 chainsaw grinder?
Ooh, that's a good idea.
Gas powered grinder.
Put like
a foot pedal kind of type.
Yeah, foot pedal throttle so I can rev it up with my foot.
Yeah, you've already got your mask on and everything as the fumes come fucking crazy out of the thing.
I breathe in so much of that shit on a daily basis. It's like I'm immune to it now. That's why I'd never get sick. I'm pretty sure because like viruses get in my body and they just die, and it's fine. That's a great idea.
What the hell is this?
Even just for like the social media lulls, I could weld
it's a mobile one. You don't have to bring the power leads with you. The highly mobile 2x72 grinder.
Yeah, I could weld a 5/8 shaft onto a clutch drum. Like I could put two.
But then, does it have the power? By the time you go through multiple cogs, is one of those things where deceptively it sort of doesn't have the torque.
Maybe. Depends on the saw.
If you do lean into it, then it depends. Yeah, exactly. Big enough fucking chainsaw. Multiple chainsaws, but you can't really synchronize them then, will you?
No, you have to go end to end to synchronize them. We've done that a couple of times.
You have to fail miserably in the beginning to at least find out how it'll go.
And it'll all be great social media content.
That's true. That's true. Next thing you know, Eric and Kevin are going to send me something. I heard the podcast and I just made this on the CNC and it mounts right on. It's perfect.
Probably.
Chainsaw powered.
They've probably already thought of it. Anytime we try and come up with something good, they've already thought of it. Speaking of our sponsors, we should probably shout out Lawrence real quick.
Yeah.
Hustle and Grind is sponsored by Maritime Knife Supply. Whether you're looking for steel, abrasives, handle material, forges, epoxy, or anything for making in general, Maritime Knife Supply has you covered. And in the US or Canada, they ship faster than the great Cobra chicken goosesses that their country is known for. Go to Maritime Knife Supply, and when you buy a 10-pack of belts, get 10% off. And tell them we sent you, eh?
Thanks, Luke.
Eh?
Everybody go check out Maritime Knife Supply. We buy stuff from them constantly, so you should too, because Lawrence is the man and he carries everything.
Yeah, I met him. I met him at the Blade show, which was actually, that was my first time going to Blade, and it was amazing to sort of meet and catch up with all these people that I've just been interacting with for years. It was kind of mind blowing as well to kind of, I hadn't left Ireland in something like 7 years, and to fly over to Atlanta. And there's a great friend who has a barbecue restaurant, Heirloom Barbecue, which is around the corner from Blade. He was kind of the nerve center. And I traveled over with Hugo Byrne and Blenheim Forge and Holly Loftus. And just basically it was a whirlwind of excitement through the entire process. But meeting the guys, actually, I have to admit, that was probably a highlight. This year has been a fantastic year, actually, and that was one of the highlights.
Yeah, I was pretty stoked to meet you. I was very surprised how tall you are.
I get that
You can
a lot.
never get you can never gauge like somebody's height. Like Noah's a lot taller than I thought he would be too, and a couple other of our friends are a way shorter than I thought they'd be. But Jeremy, but yeah, it was a good time. How'd you feel about the Atlanta airport?
I didn't know. I mean, in which way? I heard it's kind of big, and it was very strange to have that whole subway experience underneath it all. But I mean, I was probably hung over and just kind of going with the flow at that stage. So it was all part of the adventure.
I've flown cross country a couple times. I've been in JFK, fairly big airports. I've never been in one that was as massive as Atlanta. I guess
it doesn't feel massive. That's the funny thing. I did not pick up on the massive element of it, although the subway kind of went for ages. But I mean, like Heathrow's kind of big in London, and but I mean, where I am, we have the tiniest airport. When I grew up, you'd go up to this airport that was kind of like just like almost popping into the shop. And by the way, there's an airplane out the back that's going to take you somewhere. It was like this tiny sort of little place, and I remember this childhood image. I remember queuing up for the passport control, coming back home, and the passport guy was looking at your passports, waving through, and then one guy came along and said, "Where's your passport?" And he says, "I'm sorry, I don't have it." "Do you have a driver's license?" "Sorry, I don't have it." "Do you have any ID?" He says, No. I said, "I should have grand. Go on." He waved him through. It was like this tiny little airport where everybody's just so laid back. And I mean, it's changed a bit over the years. And now we have this huge airport that goes nowhere, which is kind of pointless. But yeah, no,
I've got one of those.
I'm not I have 7. Like we're a family of 7. I've got 5 kids, and my idea of putting everybody onto a plane is probably myself, my wife's idea of hell. We both work quite hard, so I think a holiday would be a fun idea, but not the travel with those numbers. And we're lucky that, like, I mean, in summer this is a beautiful place where everybody comes to for the holiday season. So I mean, we don't ever tend to go anywhere. And I think anywhere nice to go to in winter is way too far away. But there's a very funny moment because our kids, they never really leave the farm. I'm blessed that my parents at the home farm, which is down below us, we live kind of up a hill. My 2 sisters are kind of there. We've one big giant commune, and there's always stuff going on. And they're in school in the village. My wife's family are kind of a house in Skull, so they kind of pop to the other side of the village. That's where they can stay. So they're very kind of localized and running around here, and they know the place very well. Very feral children. And what happened was that we brought them up to the 2-hour drive to the local city, Cork. And I remember they met their first escalator. It's like, what is this thing? It was like we brought them to Euro Disney. They spent half an hour playing with an escalator. We finally tore them away from this, and they're like walking around these like very large buildings, which isn't very big. And they found an elevator before we got back to the car. That was another half an hour of like playing around. So I think myself and my wife are agreeing that we maybe have to educate our children to the world a little bit more.
Socialize them a little bit.
yeah. Prepare them. There's some crazier shit out there. That's for sure.
Yeah. So usually we do a segment on the show called Florida Man or Florida Man or Fraud. But we weren't sure if you would understand the reference of Florida
No,
Man.
I've been listening to your shows, so I know exactly. I mean, I may miss on some of the innuendos and the little catches, but yeah, mostly meth and Florida Man. I've been picking up on that.
Yeah. Toby
Well-
from UK Knife Maker Supplies and the Fire and Steel podcast suggested when we have a European guest or a foreign guest on, we should do Where in the World is America Man? Because that's how
I like that.
he said that's how the rest of the world views us, is how we view guys from Florida.
I know. Well, look, I don't think you I don't think you deserve it. And nobody. I mean, in our little small countries where we all think we're so fucking special, one doesn't tend to kind of realize how big America is. Yeah.
We're huge.
Yeah.
All those things you described with the differences between Irish and New Zealand farming, those all happen separately
Within
within
the country.
US.
Yeah,
because
totally.
we've got the big factory farms, and then we've got the little guy down the street.
And long may that last. Yeah, it takes all types in the world to make it go round.
Yeah. I would much rather get strawberries from a roadside stand than, from my grocery store.
But from a Florida man
I don't know.
on meth at the side of the road,
Sprinkles his meth over.
Yes.
I'm gonna get everybody hooked.
So are we going to chance this, or do you have a plan B? How are we going to roll with this? It's either I'm going to embarrass the shit out of myself, or this is going to be fucking brilliant.
I get every question wrong, so there's no way you could feel bad.
Okay, cool.
Well, I actually I wasn't going to do Florida Man because I wasn't sure if you'd understand the references. So we're just going to play a little game of fake news. So I got 3 headlines here. I'll just read the headlines, and you guys just get to guess which one is the fake headline.
It's time for some fake news.
Jeez.
Police warn that flushing drugs could create hyper-aggressive meth alligators. Police say man with no hands and no legs is armed and on the run. A man admitted to the hospital with 25 plastic toy horses inserted in his rectum. Doctors have described his condition as stable.
All right, gentlemen, it is time for some fake news. 3 headlines are in front of me. It is your job and all you lovely listeners at home to guess which one is fake. We begin. Naked guy adopts robot dog during SWAT standoff. Florida man buys 20 millimeter electronic Gatling gun pulled from Navy fighter jet. And Georgia man arrested for stealing his neighbor's entire front porch.
Oh man, I feel like those are all real.
They could all happen, I'm sure. Go again, one more time.
All right, so we start off with a naked guy adopts a robot dog during the SWAT standoff. It's like the little robot, like bomb squad dogs that they have.
Okay.
You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, the sniffer, the things like number 5 is alive kind of type thing.
Yeah, the
so
Boston Dynamics.
Okay. Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
And then a Florida man buys a 20 millimeter electronic Gatling gun pulled from a Navy fighter jet. And a Georgia man arrested for stealing his neighbor's entire front porch.
Jeez. See, the bomb dog I know is real. I saw the video, and it was quite hilarious. The guy, he's at a standoff in a motel, and it's like a Boston Dynamics robot dog is in front of the door, and he flings the door open and like bear hugs the dog and takes it in the room and shuts the door behind him.
And
So
the
that one's
Gatling
real.
gun. Yeah, what's the story of the Gatling gun? I didn't actually I can't picture the Gatling gun.
Hang on. Let me see if I can,
Out of a fighter jet?
out of a fighter jet, see if I can hold
Like
up the picture
That
without...
screams Arnold Schwarzenegger and Predator kind of type thing. Is that what? Okay. Can you even lift that fucking thing? Yeah.
I'd buy that.
It's on like a giant car hoist type thing. If there's any Navy people who are listening to this, they know exactly what we're looking at.
Okay.
Or Air Force, I suppose.
And then stealing a porch,
An entire front porch.
an entire front porch in one go or incrementally.
Oh, I don't know. I just got the headline.
Because maybe a guy went away for a week and he had time to dismantle the porch. I don't
It's true.
Or the way that I would go about it is I would just hook up some tow straps to that sucker, hook it up to my truck, and just yeet that sucker off. Is what I would do if I was stealing front porch.
Things are built different here in Ireland. Shit
Yeah.
doesn't move.
Probably made out of bricks in Ireland, I'm guessing.
Yeah, oh, big time. Stones. Lots of stones. Okay, you go for it, buddy. I don't know. I'm going to go Gatling gun because I didn't understand it the most, so I'm just going to blame the one I don't understand.
I agree with the Gatling gun because, like, I can't even have a rifle with a barrel under 16 inches. How's some guy going to go buy a machine gun that shoots bullets the size of soda cans at 6,000 rounds a minute? You can't just buy that shit.
I couldn't even afford to feed it for 1 second.
Ammo.
Yes. I say that, but one of our local gun shops has a fighter jet on their front lawn.
Okay, but is that buyer's regret though? They're convinced that they buyer's regret with that one.
All right, so you guys are both going with the Gatling gun as the fake story.
Final answer.
All right, you're right. Good job, guys.
Hey, okay.
So I constantly get these. Oh, let me just quick shout out here to the people who sent this to me. Luke Johnson sent me the Gatling gun one, and I'm sorry to everyone else who sent it to me. He just sent it to me first, okay? Because that one was sent to me, I think, at least 7 times. And the front porch was sent in by Minuteman Forge. So thank you, sir. Appreciate everyone contributing to the show. And so I have to research these to find out which ones are real and which ones aren't. And the only reference that I could find to the Gatling gun one was on a meme page. And so there was no credible source that I could find for it. And the picture that's there, it just looks like it's been pulled out for service. You know, it's on like a service cart, like somebody just snapped a picture while they were at work on an Air Force base or a Navy base and made a meme out of it. So
we have an expression, an expression that my father's always used, which is never let the truth get in the way of a good story.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, I've heard that.
That's what we do on this show.
And I mean, let's be realistic. Our military just dumps all the old equipment in the ocean. So
we don't have a military. I think we have a very efficient military, but it's tiny. We don't have very, very expensive toys either. I think the original Irish fleet was made up of 3 planes that were called Faith, Hope, and Charity. I think those.
Nice. That's awesome. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about your farm. So not people like myself, but other people on the internet, and we all know that the internet is a very evil place at times, seem to look at farming as unsustainable, as cruel to animals, or just harsh on the land that farming takes place on. How do you approach your farming in particular, and how would you rebut? Because I mean, there are silly people that I've seen on the internet who they don't even like wool because wool is harmful to sheep, and it's like, well, no, it's actually the most sustainable product you could have. So, sorry, I'll let you go ahead and just kind of your take on that.
It is an interesting subject because I suppose the first thing I want to say is that probably when I was a kid, all farmers were heroes. You know, it was like somebody who's actually going to kind of grow a crop, feed the world and be part of something. And in a more romantic level, people who gave up maybe a city job or had a romantic notion to buy a vineyard and kind of start producing wine. This thing of actually doing something with the land was noble, honest, and quite beautiful. And I kind of come from this point where artisan food production. I come from a part of Ireland where 85% of all the artisan food producers in Ireland came from this one part of Ireland. It was this massive growth of people moving here and this kind of conviviality that led to this creativity. And I grew up in a very special time where there was beautiful people doing good things for all the right reasons. And now Ireland is agriculturally blessed that we get a lot of rain, we have a perfect climate, we have a cold winter or a good summer. It's the perfect cycle that we just kind of embrace, and work with what we have. We're in a kind of a rocky, boggy part of the country, and I know that sort of more the Midlands, the more fertile areas of Ireland, kind of more for grain and everything. So Ireland is known for its agriculture, and it's basically our main income for this country. It's one of the main ones. The GDP is made up largely of agriculture. So I think one of the things is that in a very short period of time, we've gone from being heroes to now, maybe being knocked, and you hear these kind of things of truth. And yes, there's huge elements of truth. The entire world, every time we get on a plane, every time we waste, every time we buy a plastic bag for our food, everything incrementally is part of an environmental situation that we have to be aware of. Now, waste and excess and all these things are terrible. But in the end, we are still on a path where we have to feed the world and do certain elements of it. So doing it as righteously and as well as possible. What I tend to get more excited about and interested in is perhaps how we do that. So, we do need to feed the world. There's ways of mass producing food that perhaps lead to bigger problems, like the use of pesticides and chemicals and taking shortcuts that don't help Mother Nature or our bodies. So I think that I kind of am quite a purist. I realize that maybe I'd sooner see 1,000 smaller farmers doing things in a good way than maybe I would about super farms and mass production. I think that everybody would love to see a farm that kind of had a couple of pigs and a couple of cows and everything. Romantically, that's beautiful. But is it, or isn't it more efficient than a giant, very kind of precisely run, super like big farm? So to answer your question, I think that we are in a position in our place where we just always try to improve ourselves. We don't want to grow as a business. We aren't that kind of place. We are kind of locked in the amount of cows we have, produces the amount of milk that we can make, and the amount of cheese that will fit in our curing rooms that we can wrap and handle with the staff that we have. The smokehouse is the same. We butcher as many pigs that will produce the amount of salami that will fill in our smokers. So we aren't in that position where if we grow, there is a knock-on effect. So just what we need to do is improve and constantly improve. So like, getting rid of certain types of packaging, being aware of perhaps how we make things, the efficiencies, our energy consumption. So one of the things we're working on is a thing called a biodigester, where we're going to basically take all the farm waste, the cheese whey, which is a byproduct of cheese making, that can be used for things. In this case, all of this will be basically sort of, let's say, fermented, and the gas that comes from that will drive a combined heat and power generator, 50 kilowatt, 50 kVA, generator that will power the farm. Not all of the power we'll need, but a lot of it. And that's much more than perhaps if we put solar panels in every roof in Gabin. So if we can combine elements of solar, efficiency, the biodigester, which will create a lot of our energy, the digestate from that digester, which actually is better for our soil than the slurry and the waste that we're using already. It's kind of basically nutritionally richer and more absorbable into the soil. If we can keep doing these kind of things and maybe look more at perhaps being as close to carbon neutral as possible, then I think what we have to embrace is that can we pass on things that we do, agriculturally speaking, to the next generation better than we got it ourselves? And I think that's what we kind of focus on. And I think that everybody just needs to keep improving. Now, the thing is that you can get utterly obsessed and kind of run down and emotionally drained by just seeing yourself as part of a problem, and perhaps looking at perhaps the solutions and bettering yourself. Because if you're not going to do it, if somebody else is, are they going to do it better? Just rise up, find a solution, work towards that, and keep trying to do that as best as you can. And I think that's all I can ever do, is wake up every morning and just listen to people I look up to and admire, and sort of try and find solutions to all of our problems that will eventually we can pass on something better to the next generation, and hopefully they'll want to step up to those challenges and go on from it. So I think that's maybe our selfish approach on us and our farm. And I think everybody has to kind of do that, because the entire world is different, and we do need to feed the world. I don't think the whole world is going to suddenly switch to become vegan. I don't think that, battery cars are a solution in some kind of ways. That they are part of a solution, and there could be at any stage a tsunami or an asteroid that could hit the planet. There are at any times sort of the next wonder battery could be invented by just rubbing two magical, very simple, common ingredients together to get power. There's a solution that's just around the corner, and there's a problem just around the corner. Just fucking head down and drive on and do the best thing you can, is my attitude.
Yeah. I like the point you touched on about like everybody having their own like smaller farms, because a big industrialized farm, if you have a virus go through that farm that kills the entire cattle, every
like
bit
10,000 sow units or whatever else. Exactly. And it's also that's multiple farms with incomes, as opposed to perhaps one farmer that may have several employees. Now, the efficiencies are maybe in the wrong area. Do you know what I mean? I think that
do,
the
yes.
the environmental impact I'm more curious about as a question. The economic impact is probably quite different. But yeah, nobody likes the idea of sense of scale. You know, that there is something intimidating about huge kind of mass farming. But again, environmental versus economic impacts are two different elements to that side of things.
Yeah. And to touch on the original point of people, you know, being against farms, those people are those types of people, which seem to be a majority in the US. Majority of them are in the US is what I mean. But they would find anything to complain about, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, I think it's a lot easier. It's a lot easier to do that. I mean, again, like most farms and stuff like that in Ireland are probably inherited. You step up to that, and I think that you can have the best wishes in the world, but to actually be able to complete it and push it through. Now, there are things that can be done. Maybe a lot of farms should be converted to forestry, and economically speaking, you can avail of grants and kind of, you know, do things like that if that's where your heart is. And I think that it's going to take all types. And some people, if they don't feel like there is a solution to work towards, that is probably a logical one to be part of, and it'll maybe make sense. But yeah, I think maybe the one reason I'm focusing on the way we're going to approach this is very much because I'm obsessed with food, and food is largely what we're doing. We are field to fork, and one of those few places where we're literally producing, we're rearing the cows on our land to produce the milk to make the cheese, you know, and then the pigs that we're rearing here with the people who rear for us. And like the dairy side of things is so much more naturally working within our environment, you know, cows and where we are. I mean, they fart, but the thing is that we can grow grass very well and efficiently here, and fuck it, we make some really good cheese. To be fair,
that's phenomenal. Yeah, the reason that I ask is just because I love the system that you have. You know, the idea that you're, you know, farm to table. I mean, that is such a rare thing, especially here in the U.S., where you've got, like you mentioned, these large industrial scale producers.
Oh, they're everywhere, everywhere in the does. There's a friend of mine who works in Saudi Arabia, you know, producing and converting, you know, so to make these large farms that make the sort of that fermented milk drink, and from space you can see the green circles of you know, when the water, you know, gets piped into, you know, the whole thing. I mean, when there's a will, there's a way to do everything. And I think that it is kind of fun. But I think back to that whole element of sort of the I mean, to kind of the food and that side of things. What was interesting is that the doors that it's opened, and maybe because we can get stuck into agriculture, and I don't think this is agriculture talk. You know, you know, I think it's a huge part of it, but I kind of keep bringing it back that it's the reasons why we do what we do, and what kind of gets you out of bed in the morning. And I think that the people, I'm very susceptible to, and hugely kind of driven by the people around me. I've got an amazing wife who's an incredible lady, and I think she is my Jiminy Cricket. My parents are phenomenal, and they've carved such a path that they've actually done so much work that I've kind of inherited this brand name that's both fucking really intimidating, but has almost automatically kind of sort of put me in a position where I just don't have to fuck it up. Just keep doing it as best as you can. And what's lovely about food is that, you know, they always, and I keep repeating, and forgive me if people have heard this expression before, but I mean, I love that expression that the way to somebody's heart is through their stomach. And I love that point. And it was like I was saying, like last night when I was catering, I was with some close friends that our biggest part of our communication is through food and our pleasure. I mean, we're just true fucking gluttons. You know, there is we're surrounded by, and you know, it's those little pleasures in life, you know, those little orgasmic treats that we give ourselves, the food, that like the seasonality of things that aren't always permanently there. When asparagus comes out, and when sort of blackberries on the bushes, and these little things that just come and go, that are kind of nostalgically quite wonderful and beautiful. But the food was fantastic. And I think that what was interesting was that I found myself with these beautiful friends through the culinary world, the chefs that could do things with food, that opened my eyes to it and brought me more and more into that world. And that kind of, to come full circle, then the knives, and not to probably repeat myself, but that element of actually making that tool was fascinating, because it was a two-pronged kind of thing. Like, I loved this knife that became something else for me to learn, because, you know, there's always something to learn in all these products. There's nothing fucking easy about fermentation. which is silage, cheese, salami, bread, beer, all these products. If you get in any means or way cocky that I'm now a master, there's nothing I don't know about this, I have it down. You will have your ass handed to you almost instantly. Something will go wrong. It just everything. And the funny thing is I think that word artisan, which is a truly wanky word now that everybody's kind of like, abused. It's like farmhouse. Do you have that kind of thing, like farmhouse jam? I mean, like there's no fucking way that was made by a little old lady with a pot on the stove, right? So certain words get manipulated and abused. But I think to actually take artisan is to somebody to constantly learn from their mistakes and to therefore learn boundaries. And as close as you can fly to the wind within those boundaries of fuck up, chasing perfection in a very unforgiving field is a point where you have to refine to become an artisan. And again, I hate to call myself one, and I love being called one. There is this thing is that like by fucking making mistakes, you have to solve that mistake and therefore learn a solution or means and a boundary to preventing that from happening. Over grinding blades, heat treating, whatever it is. We've all fucked those things up and we know that problem before it happens. And to actually find that solution and how to swing it back into the sweet spot again. So I think these skills and these trades, be they food or craft, of riding the wave of chasing perfection, is something that's kind of beautiful. And the knife and the other thing about food is what one person loves, another person will hate, just like a knife. God, you could cut a fucking tree down with that. It's a brutally big fucking edge geometry on it, and it's blade heavy. And I don't like the it's very bland and simple. And somebody else is just going to be. I love the weight. I love the balance. It feels solid and strong. Thank God there's different people in the world. Thank God that we have different, it'd be very boring if everybody was the same.
Yeah.
And I think it goes back to make truly and utterly what you love yourself and what you want and what you would like. Heed what other people are telling you, but definitely focus on what you think is right in the beginning. And if you do have that proven wrong in the end, then it's part of a learning curve. But I think that's usually the first part. Yeah. Because I think that one of the things I found, and just I'll wrap it up with this, is that the interesting thing back when I was kind of making knives and the waiting list and that whole element of things, I always and very selfishly always had issues in sort of taking orders for knives that was a complete bespoke thing. And it is fantastic because it's the learning curve. People will often have something to teach you. Don't be naive that you won't learn something from bespoke orders and customization and everything like that. But I am so much happier making something completely ad lib and going with it, because I found that the emotional rewards of completing something that was a project from beginning, whereas making an order, you're focused entirely on, is this going to be what this person wanted? Am I making this? Am I fucking it up? I can't see myself. Do you remember that film Chocolat, where did you ever watch that movie about the lady who knew what kind of chocolate you liked just as you walk into the room? It was a French movie.
No, sorry.
Was it Johnny Depp was in it, I think. And this French lady, you would walk into the room and straight away she would know, you love the salted caramel. It would be, it's like you get a little feeling, an inkling about somebody by just meeting them, perhaps, that they're a gung-ho person that's going to be bing, bang, bosh, or somebody else who's very precise and clinical. These little instincts that maybe will help you if you meet a person to then make a knife for them. Whereas if you don't have those instincts and you're making something through email or whatever else, so again, I've gone completely off tangent and I've started monologuing, but I think this whole element of the rewards of all of these things and the learning curves. Yeah. So anyway, I spiraled off there. So somebody bring me back in line.
Also,
no worries, not at all.
We should never be afraid to learn from each other. And like back onto the agriculture thing real quick, just a point that I wanted to make was, you as an Irishman may have generationally a different perception or connection to your food than we do as Americans. You guys went through the famine, your grandparents or great grandparents did. Mm-hmm. And we've never had to, we just walk down to the store, drive down to the store, buy as much food as we need, and we bring it home. As Americans, we've 100% lost our connection to our food.
Do you
And
know what?
and I
The one of the things is that I think going through hardship is very humbling and educational. I think the Irish became pricks very quickly when we became successful. The Irish are much nicer and much more fun when we're on the back foot. I think that whenever any culture gets too big for their boots, that I think they get cocky and you start hiring people to do things for you. You don't see the rewards in the simple pleasures in life. I mean, I think nostalgically, even the food that we like comes from that slow, hard-earned dish from cheap ingredients that gave a big flavor. And you can see that in a lot of European cooking that becomes a nostalgic love. Whereas, if you just ate fillet steak and sort of caviar all the time, it's sort of it comes almost not as rewarding in some sort of way as sort of eating salted pig's feet with crew beans, as we call them, with that sort of, I love how sticky you get when you eat it, but it just makes me go back to my childhood. So I think I think that, yes, I think what part of our trait is that we've known hardships, and I think that you have to learn that. And I don't ever want anybody to go through that, but you do have to realize the culturally, it makes all the hardships we go through make us as people. And if shit's fucking sunshine and rainbows and unicorns all day every day, yeah, you might become a prick.
Yeah. It's it's that adage that keeps getting repeated over and over and over again these days, especially like strong men create good times create soft men create hard times, and
Yeah.
it's
Oh, good,
cyclical.
good. I like that. I like that. I like the phrase.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense because it is true. My grandfather's generation was way more hardy than my generation.
Mm.
You know, and
Yeah.
our kids' generations. I mean, doesn't sound like your kids are going to have that problem, but a lot of kids
Oh,
here
they
in the
probably
States.
could. They're all very different. So hopefully they'll have each other to rely on. I think
Yeah.
one of them is definitely sure as shit gonna have to bail out another one. Let's hope one of them becomes a lawyer. That we're always going to
Yeah.
need one of those. Then you need a driver, the locksmith, explosives expert.
Yeah. That's the benefit of having a whole crew of children, is that they eventually just start to look out for each other and they're friends with
Yeah,
each other. And you
yeah.
don't ever have to meet other parents at that point.
Yeah, no, I grew up with sisters, and they definitely stopped me blowing myself up a lot. My youngest, the youngest, is a girl, and I think my wife won't admit it, but I'm sure she was desperate. She definitely wanted to have a girl. I come from a long line of this phrase might not come out well. Sorry, I come from a long line of powerful women, which means that my mother was a huge part of my life, a very strong lady, and I've known all these powerhouses of women in my life. And my wife is one, and I think that, and I've known all these amazing women, and I think that having a daughter was actually something I find quite rewarding in respects that it's a different way of thinking. I don't trust men, to be honest. I don't know, I'm a feminist trapped in a man's body. So I think that, yeah, I'm kind of glad to hear that she's that there's a young lady in the ranks and in the works.
I've always wished I had a daughter. I had sons, but yeah, men don't trust men. Women don't trust other women, and it's because
Oh
we're
yeah, yeah.
men.
Oh, they can be
know,
evil to each other. They can be wicked.
yeah.
Yeah.
But what do you say we hear from Phoenix Abrasives?
That's a great idea. And then I just have one more. We can actually bring it kind of back to knives, and then we'll top off the show, I think.
Okay.
Hustle and Grind podcast is sponsored by Phoenix Abrasives, your one-stop abrasive shop. When you go to phoenixabrasives.com, click the shop icon in the upper right-hand corner to find all the abrasives you'll ever need. Check out the Incinerator 36 grit ceramic belts, along with the Trizact Gator belts that the hosts of Hustle and Grind use every day. When you check out, use code HUSTLE10 for 10% off your entire order.
Thanks, Luke. Yeah, and I don't know if it'll still be going when this episode comes out, but there is a Labor Day sale going on with Phoenix Abrasives, so check them out. Like I say, I'm not sure if it'll still be going on when this episode airs, but you can definitely go to phoenixabrasives.com and find out. Otherwise, Hustle 10 gets you a pretty solid discount. At least takes off the shipping, guys. So
I actually never knew what Labor Day was. I think I was listening to a podcast today that was explaining it, but that was kind of a new. I'm afraid the foreign element is I've never really heard of Labor Day.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, it's again we go back to the cultural thing. We what we take for granted, other people have no idea what we're talking about. But yeah, Labor Day.
Is it always the same date?
Yeah,
Is
I
it the
think
same
so.
date? I believe it's
It's not like
the
it's
first.
not like Easter that moves or anything. I think it's not based on a bank holiday or.
I believe it's the first Monday in September. I could be wrong.
I'm going to Google this because I don't keep up with holidays. I just know they exist.
So it's based on a Monday. Yeah, of course. So the date will always change.
Right. So yeah. So it's just an
The
extra
first
day
Monday
off
of the-
that we Americans get because we work. So we celebrate by not working.
Do you have
Yeah.
bank holidays? We have a thing here called bank holidays. Have you?
Yes, we have. So
Okay,
Labor Day is a bank holiday. Memorial Day, which is also on a Monday, would be considered a bank holiday. We have President's Day, that would be a bank holiday. Couple of others.
I know, stupid name now when you think back. Bank holiday. What's so fucking special about banks that we have to call it a bank holiday? Because the bank was
Crooked
closed. Is
bastards.
that it?
They fuck-
Yeah. Bankers.
What the fuck do we want to celebrate those guys? Jesus.
So I wanted to ask a little bit. So when I first heard of you was when I think you were on an episode of Knife Talk early on in my career as a knife maker, and someone asked about your handles. And so when they were describing the handles on your knives, I immediately had to go and I had to look them up and see what it was that you guys were talking about with
that
the
weird
handles.
fucking step in the handle.
Well, that's one way to look at it. So they've actually been, and I don't mean to, I don't know, I'll just say it. It was quite an inspiration to me, because the way that my handles have changed very minutely over the last few years of me developing the way that I sculpt my handles. But after hearing you describe the way that your handle step was, the one thing that I've always done is I've always ensured that there was always a flat portion where your fingers rest, so that no matter how you're gripping the knife, you always have that little shelf there for your fingers to rest, whether you've got like a pinch grip or whether some people hold a hammer grip as they're chopping vegetables and such.
Yeah.
The
Rory Connor, the guy who taught me, had this fantastic line he used to always use, which is you should always know, even in the pitch black when you pick up a knife, which way is up. I always thought it was a very interesting kind of concept. I mean, like, look, if you know knives, you'll obviously know from the weight in the field, but very instinctively, straight away, if you grab the knife and you're blindfolded or it's in pitch black, you know where you are on that knife.
So I guess my question is so what kind of inspired that drastic step in the handle for you to create that shape?
Chasing something to be unique combined with so form and function. I think I wanted it to be different. I kind of have one of those problems because I suppose if I'm working with meat and cooking, I have this wicked problem of climbing the blade a lot. So I had these very large kind of 10-inch, if not longer, sort of big Victoria Knox kind of knives I was using for cutting lard on, so diced up bacon, cutting 50 or 60 kilos of this shit, for hours and ends. And you'd get those blisters on your fingers. You kind of climb the blade up, and so standing over it. And so I think what I wanted to say was that maybe the clever thing I could do is how do I prevent myself climbing up the blade? And I thought for shits and giggles, I made a knife where there was an almost like an indentation or a step for each finger. And I kind of realized, well, this is kind of stupid because what's going to happen is everybody has different sized hands. Right. So, and then you're going to have this two ways of holding the knife, the pinch grip and the sort of the classical way of doing it. So I reduced that down to one step. So the two fingers were one element and the other two, leaving the thumb out of it, was in the other. Or you put your pinky in behind that step to become an anchor, as I kind of refer to it sometimes. So if you're holding with a pinch grip, your pinky went behind it. And that became this kind of grounding element. And visually, it's great fun because you either have this straight knife or you kind of had these shadows that were thrown by the step that served a practical and function, and it was designed really to be ambidextrous and left-handed, big hand or small hand. And I think looking at my early knives now, the step was much bigger, and it definitely was sort of, it's become more subtle now and much more user friendly across the sort of the size of things. But yeah, do you know, when you get your teeth into a bone, I found something individual, something unique that was both practical and working, and I was getting great feedback from it. And in another kind of way, to be absolutely honest, half the fucking time, all these selling points of that anchor and everything else, you almost hold the handle so gently sometimes with certain jobs that, who gives a shit about the step on it? You're just, your pinky's barely squeezing it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
It's all up in that pinch grip or whatever else, depending on how you're cooking and what you're doing. And then for certain jobs, you do grip the knife completely differently. So the visual aesthetic is very important. It has to be comfortable in the hand, and it has to work across the board of different people. And I think that's just something that I've just got that bone, and I won't let it go. And I found that actually after a while, I could make that step work more user-friendly wise than I did when I was sort of making the more classical knife that kind of had the belly and the almost, the very classic knife. I remember in the early days I was making that almost too small, and I found that if you had very large hands, you felt pinched between the choil and the end of the knife. So yeah, I think I found something that kind of looked good and that was working, and I just wanted to, like with the food, just keep perfecting it and making it better, and it created this this aesthetic that was becoming a signature that made my knives stand out. And I think, if I could say that one of the things I find very important is that my knives have been I've been at it for about 15 or so years. And I suppose for the past 10 or so years, I've probably been flogging them more and sort of, it probably saw it as a trade. And so a lot of my friends who are chefs would have those knives and see them out there. And the one thing that will just always blow me away is actually seeing that knife years later, in a video, if they're on TV, if I pop into the restaurant, if I see a friend and it's on the fucking chopping board and that's a knackered knife that's being used on a regular basis, and I know damn well he's got other knives, that's the pride.
Mm-hmm.
That's the happiness.
Yeah.
If you see that, if he's coming back to get it sharpened after a couple of years and you see it used, then that's the thing. And I think seeing that enough, I kind of knew I was onto something, because if I look up and I love those people and what they do, and if they're loving that knife and I can get that feedback from them, then yeah, I mean, if it was the total opposite, if those knives weren't being used and it was just because it looked beautiful and it wanted to be on the Magna, then fuck it, I'd be out there looking for a very different handle shape.
Yeah, that's an immense feeling, I'm sure, and it is a very distinct signature. I mean, it's one thing for me to be able to say that I can scroll through Instagram and I can see one of Ryan's knife, and that's one of Ryan's knives, because I recognize his style. But it's an entirely different thing when you've got such a signature look to where you could be in any situation and you can say, oh, that's one of Fingal's knives, because it's so distinct, and not a lot of people have that. I mean, there are,
it's tough. I mean, how many ways can you reinvent something that's gone back to flint, stone, and cavemen?
Yeah, for sure.
And I know,
very distinctive.
like I said, there's going to be more there's going to be more tweaks in the future. Somebody else will find the next thing, and it'll be kind of different. And so I suppose, yeah. Yeah, no, I think I definitely feel kind of lucky that I came across that. And there was iterations of completely fucking god awful knives. And yeah, a friend of mine has my knife that has the 5 steps in it, which is kind of funny. I must try and beg for that back at some point or get a photograph of it. But luckily we have the same size hands.
Oh, that works out well then. But you also said something interesting that I don't think I've actually ever heard anyone else say, which I really identified with, is you said you found yourself riding up further and further up on the blade, and that's something that
so like your pinch grip is
eventually
with. It's like your pinky's behind the choil at some point. It's like, fuck's sake.
That's where I've ended up many times. So so if I especially when if I'm processing an animal, I don't process pigs or anything like that, but I'm a big hunter, and I process, I don't just process for myself. I process for help other people and salvage deer whenever possible and that sort of thing. So I go through quite a few animals in any given fall, winter. And so I just, as I'm caping, I find myself more and more just riding up further and further along until my ring finger. And then, like you said, your pinky is up underneath the choil. And so that's always really been in my mind, because I'm not a chef. I can't I can't make knives for chefs if I'm not. I can make hunters because I hunt. I know what I'm looking for in a knife, and so that was something that I noticed early on. Was that's how I like to hold a knife. Is I ended up holding it, like you said, halfway up the blade, and you're barely even grabbing the handle. The handle's just a counterweight at that point when you're caping. But yeah, anyways, that was just very interesting. I've never heard anyone else kind of have that same thing that I have. So,
well, it's
but
incremental. If you do one job just over repeatedly for a long period of time, and you just do that little thing that keeps you climbing and climbing and climbing. Whereas if you're feeding family at home, you probably don't have that problem. As literally, I've got 3 sacks of onions I have to peel and cut. There is this kind of thing where that kind of repetitive and bad habits. You can where they come from is kind of fascinating as well. Why did you? I mean, you're obviously using I was probably using the wrong knife for that job if I felt I had to climb up the blade. There was obviously a number of other reasons that was making me do that. I just had the wrong tool for the job.
It's a very interesting,
maybe fatigue. Point. Yeah, maybe you get
feel you have to be over it. Your muscles are starting to get sore. You're starting to and you're trying to find solutions. They sort of say you should change your shoes 3 times a day, just for different arch supports and whatever else and stuff like that, So there is this kind of thing that, but hey, look, there's probably a machine out there that exists that would have cut that lardon. We have one now. But I'm glad I cut 60 kilos a day for lardon because it taught me knife skills.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Real quick, Noah, before we get out of here, I wanted to touch on, we got a raffle going, collab knife between me and Noah.
Yes.
So we can buy big boy podcast equipment. So everybody hit me up for that. Check out my Instagram post. And well, it's going on for the entire month of September. So I'm pretty sure everybody who knows us is going to hear about it by October. So.
And yes, go
and where will you get all that information on it? Yeah.
Yeah, go to Ryan's Instagram. He's got a post at the top of his page. You'll see it, pinned. And all the information is pinned at the top, so you can see how to enter. Very simple, very easy, and it's a beautiful knife that Ryan made out of a garbage chunk of sand. I don't know how he made that beautiful knife out of it, but he did, and it looks amazing.
It's $10 a spot, unlimited spots. It's worldwide. I just ask if you're out of the U.S. and you do win that you split the shipping with me.
Oh, you're very kind, Ryan.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of people. Shipping is such a bitch, but it's so doable nowadays. If you when you find that method and whole thing of doing it, But I think I've lucky enough there's an account with UPS because of the food side of the business, and I think everybody has their own preferred way of doing it. But I think that it is kind of getting stuff around the world once you find that the process. Could you remember in the beginning, did you have any issues with kind of blades coming back and having harmonized tariff codes and not being able to use certain phrases and words? But the frustration of using regular post, I have a lot more luck with couriers than I do with national posts.
I don't have as many issues. I know I one of my favorite podcasts is the Fire and Steel, so I listen to Toby and Honor all the time, and Toby has some incredible issues with his shipping.
But he's in England. Yeah, but they don't even start on Brexit, and I love Toby to bits. Geez. But yeah, there's. I think
is that a thing?
I think that they're learning that shit now. I mean, sadly they brought on themselves, not Toby, but I mean like UK. So they were suddenly thrown from. But I think that I'm being a prick now because I'm from Ireland. Giving the English a hard time. It's what we do. We ride each other. We give each other a hard time. But yeah, no, it is this thing where you have new systems and everybody takes them so fucking seriously in the beginning that until you find a path and relax a bit and go about it and finding that getting the dust to settle and creating systems that make things run fluid and easy. But it is. Yeah, it's just I'm kind of grateful. There's a lot of my knives kind of go over to the four corners of Australia and America and a few things, and thank God for that and social media and everything where we can have clients all over the world. But
absolutely,
it took a while to find a system to get stuff to travel easily.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
On Tuesday I have to send a package to Australia and another one to France.
The insurance is the thing that scares the hell out of me because that whole element where you don't want to fuck somebody over by putting the full price of a knife on it because that's going to come across as the tax and the VAT. But at the same time, if that gets lost, I'm wearing that.
Yeah, for sure.
And that
I know,
internal
sent one to. I sent a very small, inexpensive knife to actually to Ireland, and I think the tax is it VAT? Is that what you said? VAT?
Yeah.
I
Value
think
added
it
tax.
was 25% of the value of the knife when it got there.
Oh, it's
I felt
23%
awful.
plus the fees and the charges and that kind
So
of
I
side
wasn't
of
far
things.
off. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's 23, and but they sure shit round up. But like it's yeah, I think that you see things a lot more affordable in the States. I mean, that would, like when I was over in Atlanta, there's some things that are much more expensive, and there's such that isn't. The value for money, I think, over there, but that's a sense of scale. A big country just having those kind of things in place.
Yeah, it's regional too. Like some
Oh,
stuff,
very.
because every state is taxed differently.
Yeah. Oh, it
So,
must
like,
be a ball ache, being able
It
to,
is, yes.
being cross border and stuff. And if you live on a border, does that make things even worse if you're close to another county and stuff?
well, maybe
Or
in
state?
Maine. In Maine, we have 5.5% sales tax. Everything you buy, you pay 5% on. In New Hampshire, right across the border, there's no sales tax. So if you live close to the border and you can just drive down, drive 10 minutes into New Hampshire, buy what you need, and save yourself a bunch of money.
Yeah, but
So
can those things kind of be claimed back if you're businesses? Like what we kind of do is that
Oh, for sure.
so like as a business, you can kind of claim your VAT back if you're registered for that, and then if you're a regular punter, like you're eating that.
Yeah.
And then internationally, it's because I mean Europe is such a small things, but look, this conversation could get very fucking boring very quickly and can spiral out of control. So let's start talking. Is anybody have a dick joke or something?
Well, we'll save the dick jokes for the after show. We're an hour and 15 in. Let's go ahead and head over to an after show, guys. Thank you so much for listening. Fingal, thank you so much for coming on. This has been a very interesting conversation, and we're very appreciative for that.
Much better than our usual podcasts.
Go ahead of that.
Better than last week's, that's for sure.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Goodbye.
Have a good week, guys.
Bye.